Alright, so with all of the shots out of the way, let's start lighting and shading. So let's slap some materials on our shots, let's add some lights in there, and let's make some nice looking renders. And we're probably just gonna do this starting at the first shot, which is the one I've opened now, and then just go down the line to shot 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Because the order now matters less. We might jump a little bit back and forth, but in the first shot we already have a lot of materials that we need, and there's not that many materials and different types of light setups in this entire shot. So I think shot 1 is a good shot to start with. We're going to be rendering in Karma inside of Solaris. We're going to be using CPU Karma. Reason being is that I also rendered my original in CPU Karma. Reason being is that when I was working on this, Karma was, well, I was started working on this, of course, when Houdini was still in alpha and beta, and they were still heavily working on Karma XPU, and still as of today, Karma XPU is still in alpha. I did try it, but I had some problems with the render, so we're gonna do everything in Karma CPU, which is essentially production ready now, and I had a pretty good experience working with it, so that's what we're gonna be using. So keep in mind that if you have a slow CPU, your renders might be on the slower side, but feel free to implement this in another render engine if you want, if you're familiar with other render engines. So if you're confused on what Solaris and USD and everything is, don't worry, I'm still confused even after using it for quite a while. Essentially what it is, it's a thing by Pixar called Universal Scene Description, and essentially it's just a way to describe your 3D scenes in a way that's open source and is readable by different programs. So if another program like Unreal Engine or Maya or whatever also has USD, you can load your USD in there and everything will come in just like Alembic, but with USD you can embed materials, you can do a whole bunch of cool stuff. So that's quite nice. It does have its own sort of unique workflow, which is developed by Pixar. And that makes it a little bit more tricky also in Houdini, because there's a specific context for this. We'll get into that in a little bit. I mean, we already tried it for a little bit in one of the chapters, but we're going to use it in the stage context. And it's very different from the rest of Houdini because it uses USD at the base, and a lot of Houdini's native attributes or workflows are just not the same inside of Solaris. So a lot of attributes will have different names. The workflow is just different. So that's a little bit confusing to begin with. However, in Houdini 19, they have really made the entire workflow of just using Solaris as just an easy way to make renders without really understanding under the hood what USD is doing, a lot easier. So that's how we are going to be using it. I am going to explain a couple of things inside of Solaris and how to do specific things, but don't expect this to be a complete deep dive. If you want to know a lot more about Solaris, USD, Karma, all of that stuff, there's on the SideEffects website, there's learning paths, and they have, as you can see, there's a whole bunch of stuff here regarding USD and Solaris and stuff like that. So I highly recommend checking some of these out. Great content. I checked out a bunch as well when I was learning Solaris. So yeah, so don't expect this to be a super in-depth Solaris thing. We're just going to be learning how we can render our shots using a relatively familiar workflow you're used to from Houdini, but then inside of Solaris, just with some simple nodes. So with it out of the way, let's just get started. There's a couple of things that we still need to prepare that I know that I forgot in the previous chapter. And that is if we have a look in our environment scatter, for example, we do need to prepare some more, or you can see I already did it here because of a previous take that I didn't like. Anyway, we have a whole bunch of groups on these environment plans. So we have the drops and we have the leaves, and we know the stems and the leaves share the same material, but we need properly named groups for all of this stuff. And as you can see right now, that's not really there. But we can have a look if we have a look at the delete. And let's say we can see some stuff. So if we delete non-selected on the leaf and the stem, you can see those are the leaves that we made. So those have a group. We can have a look here at service attribute, and you can see the thing with the service attribute is the are the droplets, because those were meshed from a VDB. So that's going to be useful to assign a group. So let's just assign a couple of groups here. So I guess what we can say is, let's go in here and let's base group, let's say leaf stem, and let's also say peppermint. So peppermint is the group that came in from the from the original thing. So essentially, if we do that, we have the entire thing grouped here, and I'll call this base plant, something like that. And then let's do another group, and let's say that we want this to be surface, and let's call this droplets. So then we have base plant, droplets, and we have leaf and stem. And I guess we can even group delete the other stuff, the groups that we don't need. So we don't necessarily need those groups anymore. So maybe we just want to let's delete everything except for base plant and droplet, just to keep it a little bit more organized when we get into Solaris, because this is going to be confusing enough as it is. Let's delete some attributes that we don't necessarily need. We want to keep velocity. Let's delete the alpha for now. We just had that as a placeholder. That's about it, I think. Let's copy this stuff, because I think we're also going to need it in the hero plant probably. Yeah, because there we also have some falling stuff. So let's have a look. Let's check if everything there is working correctly. All right, seems to work. All right. So yeah, those are prepared. Let's double check. I think we have UVs and everything here. I think pretty much this is looking good. So yeah, let's start heading into Solaris. So there's multiple ways to dive in Solaris. You can make a LOP network here. It's called LOPs, light operators, I guess. You can make a LOP network. You can do stuff in there, and you see various LOP import nodes, which allow you to import stuff from LOPs into SOPs, and you can kind of go back and forth, which is quite nice. What we are just going to be doing is we're just going to be using here the stage context. Just mainly because I kind of like just having a separate sort of just a drop down here to go to a completely different context here, because essentially that's what it is. So we also want to change our working thing here to Solaris. You see mine looks now a little bit different than if you are going to do that, because I have changed mine a little bit. But again, you can just split your panes, left, right, top, bottom, then just save it out as being a new desktop. And let's actually then head back into stage, and maybe over here on the right, keep our object tab open so we can load some stuff in here. So there's multiple ways to bring stuff into Solaris. For objects, the main ones are scene import. And you can see there's scene import cameras, lights, materials. It's also scene import all the way. Essentially, you just import everything. And then essentially you can just, so it imports also import the lights, cameras, materials, and then you can essentially just render it inside of Karma here directly. But we are actually going to set up some render scenes here. So we're not going to do that. We are going to use scene import. And scene import is essentially an object level importer. So if you use scene import, you can import an OBJ node. Essentially, that's what it is. So, for example, if I say I want to import the ground, let's go object here, it's ground, And you can see now I have my ground imported. Beautiful looking ground, amazing. Look at the noise pattern, looks great. So this is essentially called the ground. And the benefit here is that it will also take into account object level transforms. So another thing you can do is use SOP import, which allows you to import SOP. So for example, hero plant, we can drag our hero plant in there. And then we get a hero plant. And to be honest, I'm never quite sure why it named, like what it does to make this sort of this hierarchy. You can see this is the entire plant, and then these are the leaves there. But the main thing, which is nice with SOP import, is you can import specific parts of a thing. For example, you can why is one of my groups here not here? Oh, wait, I need to continue. All right, yeah. So import group droplet. So you can see my droplet group doesn't exist in the first couple of frames, so that might be a problem. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna probably say that I wanna clamp to first. I want to clamp to first the everything that's not the droplets. Leave not selected. Then clamp to first, and then 1005, and do the other way around. Else we're gonna have a problem with our setup here. All right. Let's put, yeah, all right. So you can see, anyway, you can see here we have our droplets separately, or we could give this the base plant separately. So will be the thing. You could also turn that off, and you could go to import data, subset group, and you can enable your groups here. And then you see we get these individual elements. Call this, I guess, slash plant. But like I mentioned, I'm always a little bit confused on why it's sometimes grouping the way it's grouping. So what I am gonna do as of now is I'm just gonna load the droplets here as separate droplets. So say droplet. I'm gonna load the plant here, plant separately. So plants. So we have here the droplets, and we have the plants on it, and then we can right, yeah, I need to turn that off. So it's erroring a little bit. So with the group, so let's just do star and then droplet. So we have our plant here separately. So we have our droplets here and then our plant, and we could then, for example, do, you could say, right, merge them in. It's a little bit chaotic, so we could say, right, stage manager, and then we can actually say that we want to make a collection, maybe on the plant here, and just call it slash environment slash, just something like that, slash environment, and then slash hero plant, so something like that. Or let's just call it slash plants. Doesn't necessarily matter too much. And for the other one, let's do collection slash effects. All right, then we have stage manager here, and we can, in the environment, we have plants, and we can just drop that stuff under there, except for our drops. You can see we can select this stuff, so drops. We only want our drops, and we can just drag those in effects. Just call this droplets. Right. So, all right. So now we have these individual elements here that we can select. We can select plants, and we can select the droplets in the effects tab. And this is all sort of somewhat organized. Again, I'm not sure if this is the perfect way to organize this stuff. I'm still learning in Solaris, so feel free to point it out if there's other ways to do this. But now we have everything set up for this, so we can, for example, assign materials. So let's dive a little bit into how that works. By the way, let's make a general merge here, where we, for example, merge our ground in. Maybe we want to do the stage manager, by the way, after this whole thing. So then we can also, we have an environment. You can see now our ground is also in our environment. So that might be nice. See, our ground is actually a little bit low. So how materials work, you can essentially, you can import them if they're already assigned on object level. We're going to just make a sort of a material library and assign them that way. So it kind of depends how you want to work. You can make like a global library, merge it in, and then assign it. You can make a sort of a little library for each individual element. Essentially, what you're going to do is you have a material library. This is a container, so similar to a MatNet, where you can add materials. So for example, let's grab, and this just works with the same materials. So I can, for example, go in here, an object level, peppermint, asset library, and peppermint, and just paste it in here. And that material will then be over here inside Solaris, which means I can then I can merge it in. So let's call this, I guess, materials. You can see it already comes under group materials. You can actually merge that in. So we could merge it in, for example, over here. You could merge it in essentially anywhere. It will just get added sort of as a layer. So now we have multiple groups. We have, we need to go after the stage manager, and then everything's organized again. But like, again, it doesn't matter. Like if I were to merge it in here or like on top of here, it doesn't matter. So that's essentially one of the USD things where it's just, you just say where it's going to be in the structure, and then that's where it's going to be. All right. So then we have our stage manager here, and there's multiple ways to assign materials. One way is to assign materials, and let's just first do it with just a regular assign material. So there's assign, oh no, there, no. All right, click the one, assign material. So this one's pretty straightforward. We could go into environment and into plants, and then grab our plant thing, put it into input primitives, and then grab peppermint and drag it in there. You can see it will assign it to this entire group. And if we put other stuff in these plants, then it will also assign it to everything that's in there. So that's pretty useful. Another way to do this is to, if you have a material linker. If you have a lot of materials, that might also be useful. By the way, so this assign material is often used. Let's say you have a specific object here. Let's say we have, well, material. Let's say this plant has a whole host of, and this is, by the way, before I'm doing stage manager here, so that's why it's not assigning. But let's say there's a whole subnet here with a whole bunch of materials assigned. Then you would, for example, say, all right, we're gonna assign to that wing, and I want to assign to, like, do multiple assignments, do it like that, and then down here you see it's still on there. It still has all of these assignments after you do the stage manager. But now these are sort of part of this little tree here. That's a way that you can add materials. Another way to do it would be with a material linker. So with the material linker here, we get a little window, and we can say, all right, we have this peppermint material, put it in there, and you can make rules. So here I can say, right, I want to assign this to what we want to assign. I want to assign to the plants. I cannot do it, by the way, to the entire group. So, but I can drag in elements of the group. So you can see now I've assigned it to specific elements in the group. You can see now this is also assigned. Now let's say in here I do a different material. Let's say principled shader again. I'll call this droplet. Let's just make it like bright red, just because it's just easy to see. And I could say right here's droplet. So here's droplet, and I can say effects. I want to add it to droplet. See now, it's here on the droplet. So there's a whole bunch of ways to work. I'm not sure what the particular best way is. Again, you can also just assign things. Let me just demonstrate that. You can also do scene import, and then let's import the plant for a sample form from here. We could load in the thing, a plant. You can see it automatically comes in with all of the materials because then here it's set to import materials. So you can also just do all of your material assignments in object level and then just bring them in here. Depends on how you want to work. This is going to be useful later in our scenes because we can just copy and paste. Like as long as we group everything similarly, we can just copy and paste our assignments and everything should for the most part work. But again, there's multiple ways to do this. So you can just like assign your stuff. Let's just keep it like this with the material linker as of right now. But again, like I might do it differently in some other scenes depending on what you want to do. So yeah, anyway, then there's also, for example, we also want to import our camera now. So there's also scene import cameras, and that will import all of your cameras. And we could just, you could put it here in the middle. If you could put it inside, merge it in there, it doesn't necessarily matter too much. So scene import cameras. Now we will have, if we're down here, we will have our camera. So you can see we have our nice little camera animation. You can see our hero leaf here is still missing. So also let's load in our hero leaf. Which you probably also want to do as a sub import. So let's do hero leaf. It's going to be this one. Hero leaf, there we go, and probably want to put it into the same group there. We can go down here, and then we need to actually assign it. All right. Let's call it, I guess, hero leaf. Let's assign it in the stage manager under plants, and then plants hero. All right, we need to assign peppermint and put it in there. Again, now this was a little bit more steps. If we were to have assigned it in here, so just with the assign material, then it would have been faster. Again, like I'm still not sure on the perfect workflow for any scenario, but that's just how it is. Let me, for example, let's say if I remove hero leaf here, you know what? You get the point. Also, it's just going to be too long. So anyway, now we have this thing here. Oh, and by the way, I'm actually noticing that our main leaf here is not moving correctly with the noise. So I guess there was a problem that was left over from our original scene. Let's just have a look. So here we have, right, here we have that one. All right, let's just fix that real quick. Let's object merge. The plant in there. Point deform our leaf with a time shifted. Again, I already said that like we might run into issues that we didn't see coming when we made our original shots. And then the point, that is that one. All right, and now it should theoretically move along, yeah, with the noise, right? out hero leaf. Right, and then we can load in the hero leaf there instead. Right. So just fixing some problems while we're at it. All right, so now that's all working fine. So we probably also want to import our environment scatter. So let's do sub import. And then grab these scattered plants, drag it in there. Say droplets, call this droplets, I guess. Put it over there, and then the other one is going to be everything except for droplets, right? So we have the plant. Let's merge that over there. Let's merge that one over there. Let's call this droplets BG or something. All right, go down here. Let's have a quick look as to why stuff here has disappeared. We're not really using these collections, by the way, so we might as well delete those. Let's do stage manager before this thing. Let's do, oh, the way we were using it. All right, effects, yeah, stage manager. Let's drag our plants here behind the effects. So now we have plant drops. That's big, right? And we're loading everything in here. All right, now stage manager there is breaking for some reason. All right. There we go. So let's go to our materials. Let's go to droplets. Let's go to effects and let's assign that thing again. All right. So now everything has the droplets assigned. At least you would think so. So look. I think this is a viewport bug because if I go to Karma here, you can see it's clearly red. Alright, so that's just weird in the viewport, I guess. Let's just let's go through our thing again with the effects. So we have. Alright, so let's load in material. So let's do a Megascans asset. So here's one, mossy forest floor. Let's put it to export settings and Houdini, and we can open up Megascans plugin. You can actually also load this into USD scene, import into USD stage. And then if I'm gonna press export here, then we technically should get a material here. All right, there we go. So you see, we get a material library here. And I guess if so in this case, we're also only using this material under the ground here. So in this case, it might make sense to just drag the material library underneath the ground, put assign material on, put a star in there, and wow, beautiful. We have a ground. So it's actually on drop down here. You can see you can do different render engines. And if you go to Karma, it's gonna render in Karma. You can see now it's a little bit dark because we haven't introduced any lights yet. So it's maybe even too dark to even see what's going on here. So maybe it might be a good idea to start adding some lights. So let's put this back to GL. And let's go down here in the bottom. Just look through our camera. Let's start introducing a couple of lights. So you can actually just make lights here. Let's for example make an environment light. You can actually just merge this in, and I guess merge it in wherever you'd like. For example, over here, just merge it in. Let's use HQUEUE. So I'm going to use the same one that I think I did in my original. That's not that. That's still a root slash. Let's go to assets and then ACRI. And it's a cloudy Vondelpark 4K. So that's from ACRI Haven, or I should rather say Polyhaven nowadays. So if I just use for Vondelpark, so there's cloudy Vondelpark, and Vondelpark is in the Netherlands, and that's where I live. So I figured it would be cool to use. But also it just looks, I guess, like a little, somewhat like a light scenario that we might use for what it is we're making. But again, feel free to just use something else that you want. So you can see immediately it's popping in here. Let's just try in here. Let's, by the way, on our, I guess we can just leave the red for now. I would say let's change our droplet material. But we're just gonna do this. You can see it's gonna initialize. All right. So you can see now it starts rendering, and we have, it's blurring. So if you press D in the viewport, you can disable or enable depth of field. Apparently depth of field is enabled by default, which I'm not sure why you would want that, but that's how it is. So you can increase some intensity here. You can enable some denoising if you want. So you can enable denoising to get like a little bit faster. Well, and the denoiser actually works quite well. So you have a bunch of options here. We're going to get into how to permanently change this later down the line as well, because this will just reset every time you open the Houdini. This is just going to be for the viewport. It's also where you change to HQUEUE again, where that's not really going to work for what we're going to be doing. So the nice thing about this sort of structure that we have here is that you could also, for example, just create placeholder objects. For example, I can make a sphere here. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Then I could merge in the same HDRI here. Here we go. And I could merge in the materials. And I could say, all right, and I need to, I think, turn down my the amount of cores that I'm using for, because this is getting slow with the recording going on. So if there's a little bit of judder, that might be it. I'm gonna check that in a little bit. But now I could, for example, say, all right, assign material, and then I could say over here, all right, maybe I want to assign one of my, let's say my my droplet material to my sphere here. So you can see, you can use the same materials, and this is an easy way here to sort of branch out and do some tests and stuff. So this is not, obviously not the correct material. So I guess let's just go into the into this thing. Let's change this back. So let's go into, let's get one. Let's make this a refractive material. So let's turn on transmission. Let's make it a little bit less rough. Do something like 4:1 for water. You just have some stuff, and there's also here, there's some stuff with fake caustics. You're not gonna really notice this now, but that's gonna be useful later. So we can test it out there, and then after that we can just go back to our, let's just first go back to GL. Just view our setup here. You see it already looks not pretty nice here in the viewport. To initiate karma here. Now you can see we already have these like the droplets in the environment's already looking pretty nice. So we can add some more lights. Maybe we want it to sort of feel like there's some light coming over here from the left. So how I had it in my original here is I had a little bit of extra light here. I had some rim light somewhere over here as well. I guess that's also already here coming from the HQUEUE a little bit, so I'm not sure if we really need to do that. So let's do a light. Just add light here. You can just merge these lights here in separately. Here we go. And then you can just move out here. As you can see, we can just keep working here in the nice IPR screen. So you see, we're working in a relatively small scale here. Doesn't necessarily matter too much. Probably just want to scale down my light a little bit. Let's do disk. Let's increase the. Really increase the intensity. See if are we actually we're shining it the wrong way. So we need to actually shine it that way. You can see it's really nice to have this stuff in the viewport because it's just easier to do this. By the way, if your light is smaller, the shadows are going to be a little bit harder, just like with a real light, of course. Let's just put it, I guess, somewhere over there. And let's just increase the intensity by, or that's too much. Maybe just want to be a little bit bigger. Intensity a little bit lower. Let's do temperature. See if we can make it a little bit warmer or a little bit colder. Since it's going to be raining here, we don't want it to be too warm. Let me turn down the right a little bit. Alright, it's too much. So I think I might want to do a little bit more of a rim light. Okay, so I have here. So what we can do is we could add an extra light here. Maybe call this rim. And throw it in, make it a cylinder. Let's turn on, just go to a regular viewport maybe. See, the regular viewport already looks pretty decent. Let's make it a disk. Make it smaller. Let's just double check if it's actually even shining the right way, not like we had before. All right, so it's again shining the wrong way, so we want to rotate it like that. We can look through our camera. Just trying to sort of shape a nice looking picture, and like a rim light can help separate objects from the background. So without a rim light, it would really look like there might be a good way, by the way, to show you some other features here inside of Solaris. So it's actually, if you open up this thing here, you can take snapshots. So let's for example make one here. Let's say this is our, let's just have it resolve for a little bit. We can say, all right, let's make a snapshot. Now we have a nice little snapshot here. We can do view image. I'm gonna take a little bit to open. So not sure why it's not opening, but you can also do load in file browser, and then opens in file browser, and then you get a little thing here. And you can then do another one, for example, with the rim light. You can compare that way. And the cool thing here is that even you can actually revert network to this snapshot. So you can see here my rim is on. Here's my rim is on. Here my rim is off. If I say revert to snapshot, you can see now we revert to the network how it was at this snapshot. So if you have multiple snapshots, you want to try multiple looks, that's a pretty great way to do so. You can just keep your gallery and then just work like that. So if you want a little bit more control even over all this stuff, there's also something called a light linker, which there's a thing you can throw in there. You can link lights to objects. By the way, let's call this one key, even though it's not necessarily key light, it's somewhat of a key light. So for example, I could say, all right, I have this rim light and I only want it, so if I put rim in here, I can say, all right, I will only want it to appear on my hero plant. Where is this? Or I should do that after my stage manager. So here the order does matter a little bit, because of course in the stage manager here we are actually making all of that a little bit more. Oh, this is looking a little crazy in the viewport now. Let's turn off materials. So over here, the light linker, you can actually link stuff to your lights. For example, I could say, right, I have this light. I only wanted to, let's do rim light. Only wanted to do hero leaf, and let's say that I want this one. Turn on thing again. And material linker. So now theoretically, even if I rotate this, you can see it's not even lighting the other plant, because in this light linker I have assigned it to a specific thing. There's also another thing called light mixer, and that will allow you to just you just get a bunch of nice sliders if they want to show up. Oh yeah, I guess you should need to drag them in. So right, let's go back into Karma. I'm trying to see if there's a way I can reduce the amount of cores I'm using in the viewport here. But we're gonna get to how to do override for that later anyway. But here we have a light mixer, and we can say sliders. And for example, I could say, right, I want to reduce my rim light, increase my rim light. Let's see, is this, by the way? Yeah, it's so correct. So you can see how you can sort of just just do some nice stuff here. You could tinge your light red if you wanted to, which probably don't want to, but you most definitely can. So yeah, we can just build a sort of a nice look here. A lot of the stuff here, by the way, like the depth of field, we're actually going to do that in compositing. So we're going to need a couple of AOVs in order to be able to do that. For the most part, I think this looks pretty decent. So we need to we're gonna need to also implement terrain, which is going to be a separate render. So we'll get to that in a little bit. By the way, you can hide stuff here in the viewport. So for example, if I don't want to view cameras or lights in the viewport, you can turn that off. You can also turn off geometry if you want. And by the way, if I just want to increase the overall intensity of this rim light here, I could do it in there. And I kind of feel, one second, kind of feel that the rim light's not doing much. By the way, let me throw my material linker before I do all of that stuff. All right, might make a little bit more sense. You can also just override here the values. Let's do maximum value of 100. Right, now we actually get a little bit more control here. So you do that by right clicking, or wait, no, not right clicking, you do it by clicking on the thing here, and then so these parameters actually override the stuff here, which I didn't know. I thought it was a multiplier, but I guess this is a it does cap them. So the more you know. So anyway, now you can see we can have a sort of a nice control here for our stuff. And same with our key light here. We can say, all right, let's do. So we have a whole bunch of things here that we can change. But what you can also do is you can make a karma LOP here. And if you highlight the karma LOP, it's going to use the settings from the karma LOP. You can see this is going to suddenly enable depth of field and stuff like that again. So you can see here we have a whole bunch of settings. You can see it's also a lot slower now. What I like to do is so there's multiple ways to render. There's convergence mode. You have variance, distributed, and the path trace. So with variance here, you can say minimum, maximum samples, stuff like that. I found that just putting it to path traced is a little bit more straightforward. That's, by the way, disable depth of field. With path trace, you don't necessarily have a lot of options, but I found for the stuff that we're doing here, it was the fastest. I'm sure there's many uses for variance, and with distributed you can set specific samples for your things. So let's say you have a lot of refraction, you want a lot of refraction samples and not a lot of diffuse samples. You can do it there, but we're just gonna keep it to path trace and keep it a little bit simple. So here's the limits. Essentially, that is how do I explain this? Might be good to do an example for that. Let's actually do a little example for that. It might be better. So let's go back to our thing that we had here. Let's do our little sphere. Right. So here we have our little sphere, refractive sphere. Let's do a karma LOP after this thing. Let's put it to path traced. And let's turn off the camera effects. All right, so that's looking pretty good. However, is there a copy? I want to copy and transform. So let's actually just do it manually. All right. So what if I put a? You know what? Let's actually just do copy to points. Let's do it to the internal sub. Let's make a line. Let's do it in that direction. Let's do a couple. Let's do 8. And then we need to do a little prototype. All right, there we go. Now we have a couple spheres here. Let's do karma. And let's assign to everything. All right, let's just assign to that thing. All right, like that. All right, so you can see now we have our, so but you can see if we look through this, start to get a little bit black. So this has to do with the limit. So let me make this more extreme. If I turn down the reflection and refraction limits, you can see refraction limit of 1 will essentially have this be mostly black. You can see if I look to the side, it looks fine, but as more of these things start refracting each other, it becomes black. Let me just keep the reflection high because that's not going to matter here. But if I put it to 2, you see it's get a little bit less. 3, a little bit less. 5, less. I put it to 12, it's completely gone. So essentially it's how many objects can it sort of refract in itself. So if there's, like this is 1 trace depth, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if you have it quite low, it's going to be faster, but it's not going to be able to refract all the way to the back. Well, if I make it like 8, and probably needs to be even higher in this case. See, if I make it higher, you can actually can actually look through the entire thing. So kind of hope that makes sense. So you want to keep this as low as possible while still looking good. And this exact same thing applies to reflections. So how many times can something reflect? And again, if it goes above it, it will turn out black basically. So yeah, refraction limit. Let's do the refraction limit a little bit higher because we have a bunch of droplets. I guess subsurface scattering limit to 1. I'm not sure if we have subsurface scattering now on the plants, but so we can just have this run for some frames. Over here you can see how long it takes, and you can set the pixel samples here. I didn't end up even needing that many samples when I was rendering. But you probably, depending on the time that you have, you might increase it. I think most of mine were between 32 and 64, but again, it depends. And especially in the last shot, we're gonna get into some issues. So in terms of what we want to export, of course, we want to have a bunch of AOVs. So you can go into image output, and you can see here we have a whole bunch of AOVs that we can select. So I came to the conclusion that I wasn't explaining what AOVs were because I kind of expected a lot of you to already know. But if you don't know what AOVs are or what they're used for, they're going to become very important later in the course when we're going to do compositing as well. And we're going to be compositing in Fusion. I have a free course online called Compositing for 3D Artists. If you look for that on YouTube, you will find it. I recommend just watching, if you're not familiar now with AOVs at all, just like have a look at it and watch at least until like the second video. So there's 4 videos total, and watch at least second video. It's also where I'm going over ACES again, which is what we're using right now to render. Also in the we configured that in the beginning, and I'm explaining different types of AOVs and stuff like that. The AOVs that Karma generates are a little bit different than the ones that are discussed here, but implementation later is going to be pretty much the same. So if you're not familiar with AOVs and stuff like that, I recommend checking Compositing for 3D Artists, at least the first two videos first. And then later, before we get into the compositing chapter, you need to have watched the entire thing if you're not familiar with all of that. So yeah, I figured I'd throw that in between so that you're at least can be up to date with the with what AOVs are and how they work. So let's just select all of the diffuse stuff here. Or I guess we can also just turn off a couple. Let's do combined diffuse. Combine diffuse, direct diffuse, indirect diffuse. Let's just enable all of them. Combined glossy reflections is probably enough. BSDF named codes. Transmission. You know what? Let's just enable all of them. It's gonna make it a little bit heavier. Lights and emission. I don't think we need that. Let's do subsurface scattering just in case we have subsurface scattering. We're gonna need albedo for the denoising. Ray level outputs. World position might be useful. Even though I didn't end up using it in my compositing, but I'm going to refer you to a compositing course I made in Fusion later. So if you don't know how to use world position passes and stuff like that, I can refer you to that. But let's just do most of the default passes you would normally do if you're going to be rendering stuff like this. Oh, by the way, we don't need ray origin. We actually need P for world position. We want depth, of course, for the doing depth of field in post. I want the UV pass. We want a normal pass for denoising. And now you might want to view this stuff over here. What you can actually do is you can actually go through here. You can see all of your well, code is not giving us anything. These are all of our diffuse passes. Depth. So you can see we have everything that we need. You can view here. By the way, another way to view your IPR here is to press space 5 on the keyboard here. And then you get this, you can view it here in sort of a, more like a picture viewer type thing. So this is just, yeah, you can actually zoom in on your image, because if you're going to be doing that here in the regular view, then you're going to actually zoom in, and you can see now we're going to go out of our camera, and then we don't want that. Over here, you can actually zoom in. So that's actually quite nice. So you can actually also do a render region with Alt on the keyboard and then just dragging. As far as I know, you can only do a render region in the same aspect ratio as your camera. For some weird reason, I don't know. I asked someone from SideFX about this, and they didn't know either. And if someone knows how to do a different aspect ratio, let me know. But as far as I know, you can just do default aspect ratio. I don't see any way to change that, but maybe there is. So a couple of more things we need to discuss before we throw out a render here. There's actually also some other things that you have to turn out. Let's turn this off. So if we look at our plant here, zoom in a little bit. It's actually not the smoothest plant ever. Let's turn on camera. You can see it's not really smoothed. So for example, what you might want to do is if you have a SOP import, you can actually go to turn on geometry handling, treat polygon as subdivision service. See, this will treat it as a subdivision service during render time, so then it will subdivide it during render time. So we can do that on all of our stuff there. Treat it as a subdivision service, because that is what they are. Subdivision service. So that's just going to use, I guess, Catmull Clark subdivs. So that's quite nice. So if you want to adjust some additional stuff to your things, you might want to use a geometry. If you just type geometry settings, you have everything. So geometry settings will allow you to set, well, basically settings on whatever it is that you're doing. So let's put one over here for our droplets. And we want to maybe set velocity blur, and enable velocity blur, enable motion blur. Let's just enable all of these motion blur type things. Let's just turn everything on. So, and you also have other stuff here, for example, the samples. And again, those are the same as stuff over here. So if you go over here, you see diffuse samples, reflection samples, blah, 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 blah. And if you go to variants or now to distributed, you can see we have these same samples here. We don't really have to deal with those because we're just going to be using path traced. But if you use distributed and you really want to fine tune everything that it is you're doing, you can do that over here. You can increase or decrease stuff for each individual element. Dicing quality here is the quality of your subdivisions. We can, I guess, just leave it as is. There's also caustics here. So on these droplets, we probably want to enable caustics. So enable caustics, and you can enable the roughness of your caustics there. Probably not really gonna notice it too much in this scene, but there you go. And here we have our scene. So let's set an output path already for this thing. So I want to output to $root/ and then let's just navigate to something. I'm gonna go to render, 3D, and let's create our shot 010 here. Let's say that this is this is going to be version 1. I'm going to say shot 010 v001 $f4.exr. So which camera do we want to use? We want to use our actual camera here. We want to render it 1920 by 1080. In terms of denoising, So there's actually denoising that you can do on this image. So let's go to, where is it again? Filters. NVIDIA Optics Denoiser or Intel Open Image Denoiser. And the thing is, you might not want this specifically on your beauty because we are going to be denoising this inside of compositing. However, we can actually rebuild, like if we want to denoise this ourselves later, like all of our AOVs here are not going to be denoised. So we might as well still denoise our beauty because maybe it already looks pretty good denoised, and then that way we don't have to even denoise our thing ourselves. You can see this already gets quite clean even with very little samples. So maybe we could crank this down to like something like 24. And this is looking pretty, like I probably want to move the rim light back a little bit more. It's a little bit extreme some places. Yeah, something like this looks pretty nice. A nice little highlight there. So this actually looks quite nice. Essentially, we can already render this. Oh, by the way, we are forgetting one thing that we need. We're gonna need an extra render variable. So you can go to extra render variables, click plus. You can go to Cryptomatte. So the Cryptomatte for the objects. That will allow us to, not sure if it's gonna show up here, by the way, but it will export a Cryptomatte that we'll be able to use in compositing. It's gonna be quite nice. By the way, you can also just move, like, let's have a look at our droplets actually look, so I was gonna say it looked good, but looks a little bit weird. Let's, yeah, all right, so it looks decent enough. It looks a little bit floaty if you are so close here, but again, we're gonna spend a little bit more time on that with our sort of final setup. The edges here on the leaves look a little bit weird. Maybe actually we want to change some of the materials there. So let's go to displacement and maybe we want to actually, maybe we want to change the offset and maybe we want to decrease the effect. So now you can actually already render this out if you want. So there's multiple ways to just render this as a sequence. Of course, you could just put to render frame range and then put your frame range here. So that's the 1 until 1100. And then you could press render or render in background and it would render. Or what you could do instead, if you use a render manager like Deadline or HQ, you can go to Out. You can go to Fetch. And then you cannot drag this in here because that's not going to work. You need to double click on this and you can see there's a ROP USD render in there. You can drag that in. And then from here, you can put a deadline ROP to submit to Deadline. If you don't know what Deadline is a render management tool. So you can queue up renders, give priorities, stuff like that. Or you could use HQ render. Again, that's similar to Deadline, but just for Houdini. And you can render it that way. Or you could just press render here and then, oh, and now it's going to start rendering. But essentially, this is how you set up a sort of a simple render here in Solaris. So feel free to already render this out. Now I'm gonna discuss for this shot, because of course after this we're gonna move on to the next shot, because we also need to render the rain here, and I want to render that separately. So I don't want to render that into the main shot. You could definitely do that, render it into the main shot. The thing is just, it's gonna make our compositing a little bit more complex, because we're gonna add depth of field in compositing. We want to do some grading, stuff like that, and we're going to have highly refractive rain falling through our scene. So might be better to just load it in separately, render it separately, and then we can composite it on later, but we do want it to reflect the environment. So we just need to discuss how that works. All right, so this is where we're going to be doing some branching over here. So let's do a SOP import, and let's merge in some of our rain. So we actually want to, so what we did here on the right is we copied some backed geometry here as a preview, but we actually want to load our points into Solaris. So out rain, because we can just render these as points. It's going to make more sense. So let's go over here to the left, and we're going to have some particles here. And if we do karma, you can see we have particles that are quite big. So maybe what we want to do is want to put some p-scale on it. Let's lay 0.01, 001. Need to figure out what the... So Solaris uses different scene scale than Houdini. Houdini is in meters, Solaris is in centimeters. It does do a lot of conversions by itself, but if you're dealing with p-scales like this, just keep that in mind. So let's also attribute delete some stuff from our particles here. So maybe we only want to keep the velocity and we want to keep the p-scale, just because I want to start explaining some other stuff, and then it's going to be better if we don't have this many attributes. All right, there we go. So in Solaris, there's actually also attributes, but they're different from just Houdini attributes. And to be fair, I'm not super familiar with all of the Solaris attributes or the USD attributes yet. But anyway, if you check your SOP import here, and then you can go into the points, you have you can have a scene details graph here, which you can see has all of your attributes. You can see velocities here, orientations, stuff like this. You can see the type that it is, and you can see width here. I assume that this is going to be the p-scale. Let me just double check. So if I make this bigger here, yeah, you can see the widths changing. So as you can see, these attributes in USD are different from Houdini's own attributes. So that's going to be a little bit tricky getting used to. But the good thing is that Houdini is doing a lot of these conversions under the hood, and in Houdini 19, a lot of this stuff just gets converted. Just keep in mind, if you want to troubleshoot this, you're going to need to look at your scene graph details. If you don't have that, you can probably open it here, yeah, over there. But you can see the type, the name, and they will all have, all just have different names than what you're used to. And I'm still learning a lot of this. It's an entire new world. So if you thought Houdini was already difficult, welcome to USD. So you can actually also change this stuff in here. If you right click and do edit property, it will put down an edit points. For some reason this breaks the existing stuff. I'm not sure if that's a bug, but well, essentially that's what it's doing here. So yeah, you get a slider, and this really bugs out. So I'm not sure what's up with that, but let's just keep doing it over here, just so you know that there are options here to change your values. So yeah, anyway, we have the rain here loaded in. Of course, let's maybe just call it rain as well. It might make sense to put it in our collection for effects. So I guess you know what? Actually, it doesn't really matter because we're rendering this separately anyway. But we also want some motion blur on this stuff. So that's again where this geometry settings comes in. So we append that, and you have motion blur there. You can set or create grab velocity, and you can see now we are grabbing velocity, so now we get velocity blur. Beautiful. All right, let's add a material library because we want to add some material here. Let's do printable shader, call it rain. Then let's do transparency 1, right? Now you want to clear this autofill materials, and it will automatically put it in here and put it in a materials tab here. Let's assign it to everything because, well, there's basically just rain here. So one more thing is that this is where it might be like, for example, we put our cameras here in between. This is where it might make sense to just put them in separately. So the order that you do all this stuff doesn't necessarily matter too much. But for example, if I just merge camera in here, like this, camera will still be there, but then that way I will also be able to merge my camera in here. So then we can actually look through our camera and we'll still have our camera over here like nothing happened. So essentially that's just good practice to keep doing. Let's stay organized. Let's maybe move our lights here to the left. All right. And we also want to merge in our lights. So let's do something like that. It's already getting a little bit chaotic. So we want to stay a little bit more organized. What you could also do is you could also say that we want to fetch stuff. So we're going to say fetch. We can say lights. We can fetch lights in there. And we can fetch camera. If we go in here, we'll have a camera and we'll have lights. So I'm just showing different ways to sort of organize this stuff. Because like I mentioned, there's not a single way to do it. But if you're gonna load these cameras in multiple ways, you still need to have probably have a separate branch here, because if I were to put it in between here and then fetch it, it will also use all of this stuff. So yeah, just keep in mind with all your order of operations stuff that's going to be important. So anyway, I can render this now. This might make sense if we do Shift F5 to just have a look at our thing here without the light in the background. So we have some decent looking rain. So we might want to go in there and turn down the opacity a little bit. So now it's just refracting the HQUEUE. What we probably want is we want this to be a separate render, but we do want the plants and stuff to be in this render refracted, but we don't want to actually render them out. And we also want them to be matted out. Of course, we have a matte from our from our original render. So let's discuss how all of that type of stuff works inside of Solaris. So essentially what we want to do is we want to actually merge in that stuff that we have here, but we only want to use it for refraction. So that's where this geometry settings comes in. So let's do geometry settings. Let's do a fetch. By the way, let's move this to the side. Maybe just try to keep our node a little bit organized, because else we're just gonna keep everything very chaotic. So let's maybe call a out environment here, and let's fetch that into our thing here. Fetch, right? So now we have there we go. We have our geometry here. Now we want to do a geometry settings, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. And I don't know if you noticed, if you used Solaris before, the layout changed a little bit in Houdini 19 and got on a lot better. So props to that. Whenever I was going back to during the beta during 18.5 to check if something was maybe bugging, or if it was was just me. It was always a little bit confusing going back to 18.5. So this is getting better. So anyway, there are here options for render visibility. You can set or create, and then we can say, right, I want it to be invisible to primary rays, phantom. It will mean it will be visible to refractive rays, but not primary rays. So if I just turn on render, okay, yeah, this is all right. As of right now, it's not doing anything. That's probably because we haven't really merged it in anywhere yet. Merge it in. We probably want to do is we do want our materials on there, because right now we don't really have materials. So it might make sense to put the stage manager there and put the material there. All right. So we have those. All right, let's merge those in here. Let's see if this works. Taking a little bit longer to initialize because we have a lot more geometry, of course. Let's maybe just test this out if we just go over here. Maybe we want to do the geometry settings after we do all the materials. Sometimes that order can matter. I haven't really discovered it as to why, but I have found some scenarios where the order would make or break things. All right, so let's have a look at this thing. Let's just test it out with invisible. Oh, by the way, we will actually, I think I know. Primitives, let's put a star. So to override anything that's in there. Let's do karma. All right, so now nothing is rendering. All right, that's good. Let's exclude primary arrays. It's initializing. All right, so we don't see anything. That's good. Let's try it in here. All right, there we go. So now it is refract. Yeah, it might not be super obvious because I mean it's just rain that we have here. But it is. Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, you can clearly see it here. So it is actually now refracting the environment. And we have our rain and we have refraction in the environment. So one more thing that we also need to do there is we need to also matte this out. Well, it's another option here. So you can use holdout mode, set or create, matte. I'm not sure how obvious that's gonna be. Yeah, you can see it in some places, I think. Let's just turn it off and see if we can let's make a snapshot. You can see these old snapshots here were actually saved into our folder. Let's turn it off. I'm looking at it. I'm not sure if this is working. Right, so let's just double check this. It might be more obvious if we just actually make a little bit more rain. So let's actually emit a little bit more rain in here. Let's do birth rate. Let's do 3000. Might actually look better if we have more rain. Anyways, let's just override it. Right, so now we should have more rain here. Right, that seems to be the case. Probably want even more. 10,000. Save it out. Still feel like we're not getting that much rain. I really want like a lot of rain. 50,000. All right, yeah, all right. This might be too much, but it's got to be good to try this out. All right, yeah, that's obviously too much rain, but let's just try it out, see if the matting works. Oh, okay, so holdout mode was set to none for some reason. kind of thought that we enabled that, but I guess I didn't. So it still doesn't seem to work. What we could do instead is put another fetch, put another geometry node, maybe turn off the render visibility flag here and just use a separate one here as a matte. Matte. Put it in there. Merge that in there. See if that makes difference. All right, there we go. Not sure why that wasn't working combined with our other thing. But yeah, as you can see, now we're matting out the geometry there. So let's reduce our rain a little bit because it's getting a little bit extreme with this much. Let's do the 10,000 again. It's probably going to be a good hybrid. Enable karma. No, that's looking pretty good. Let's maybe, by the way, we don't actually need to separately fetch that. We can just do it like that. So let's clean up our network a little bit here. Now we're getting pretty close. Might be a good idea to name maybe a couple of things. So let's, I guess we can get rid of the thing that we did over there on the right. We don't particularly need that. Let's just move some stuff here. Let's do some underlays. Call it load geometry. Maybe let's grab the cameras and take them out of there. Lights plus geo plus camera. And again, what you could also do is, if you don't like it like that, you could also just fetch this and then just put it in there. Might be even more organized like that. Then I guess it could make sense if we do the stage and material stuff over here. Stage manager, material library over there. So let's go back to our scene here. So this all still works because we are just fetching it. So I guess we could give this a name. Fetch geo. And over here, Control B again to maximize. Call this rain. I guess we could color code that. A little bit blue. So, like again, you just have to figure out for yourself like how you like organizing, how you like working. Like I've shown you a whole bunch of just little tidbits here and there on stuff that you can do to sort of organize your workflow. A lot of the stuff, like I'm not completely sure if these are the best workflows or if that's even the way that it's meant to be. I watched when I started getting into Solaris, I just watched some stuff on how it worked, and I started using it, figuring out my own workflows. So these are just some of my own workflow tips, I guess you could say. But again, it's not like I highly suggest just checking out some stuff on the SideFX website as well, because they have a whole host of Solaris, USD, Karma tutorials of people talking about how they work and how USD works. So it's gonna be good to just check out. Anyway, let's continue with our rain thing. Let's call it here. Select it and call it out rain. So let's just have one more look at how our rain looks, and then we can set up a karma node to render out our rain. So I'm going to reduce the amount here a little bit. Maybe instead of just sketching it out, let's just cull this out with a little wrangle. Again, float r equals random at ptnum. At id. Oh, we need to, by the way, turn off karma. Let's do this before we cull the attributes, because else we're not going to have an ID, of course. And if r is below channel float, remove point 0 at ptnum. We're gonna just do a little bit of a culling setup. So let's just have a look at that. It's probably gonna be a little bit, and let's do it above. That might make more sense for the. Right, so then we can cull it based on the ID, and then we don't have to keep caching out new sims. Let's have a look at this. Oh, we need to. All right, something like that's probably pretty decent. Let's do Houdini gel. Let's do karma. Plug it in there. Let's copy the path from that one. Let's grab our camera. Let's do 1920 1080. Path traced. Let's do something like 24 pixel samples. So we can also turn on denoiser for this, or we can, I think we can probably just do it. Like, it looks decently well, and this is going to be a layer on top. Or should we do, I think, yeah, right. So let's keep it on. Then also let's do some AOVs. So let's do this stuff. I don't know, we don't need codes. Let's do albedo. So we're gonna need albedo to do denoising if we want to do denoising. You can see it doesn't necessarily look that interesting here, but then we have that. And then we want to do zdepth to help with the depth of fields. All right. We want to go in rendering image output. Let's see, where is it again? Oh yeah, turn off depth of field, of course, because why in the world do we want depth of field on this? We don't. And that's looking pretty decent. So now we've basically have everything set up. I'm thinking about this correctly. Oh, there's one thing here that I don't think we've added here. That's the hero droplet, the big drop. So let's do scene imports. It's going to be the big drop. That's that one. That one falls into place in the last couple of. So let's put it in stage manager. Let's do the big drop inside of effects tab. Material linker. Drop. Oh, we already have droplets. Droplet. We want to assign the big drop. Right. So then we also have that one. Now, there's one thing that we need to check here, because I'm not sure if the motion blur here is going to work on this thing. Let's just have a look. Initializing. All right, so there's no motion blur on that thing. Probably need to do is to put down a cache that will cache the frames for that thing. And then if we scrub, I think this should blur now. Next frame, it can be a little bit slow. Let's just test it out with separate geometry settings on our one main drop here, so we can actually have a look at this. All right, so you can see that that works. Let's do the geometry settings maybe separately on these on all these things. We can do it like that. All right. Yeah, so now we have our environment and we have our range separate. I think that's about it. Let's use it oh yeah, we need to actually view our actual proper karma lop here, of course. To the so you can see motion blur there is working. Don't see it on the sphere there, so maybe wanna check what's up with that. So let's just have a quick look. Let's double check if this actually has velocity. Main plant. That's gonna slow down again there. All right. Right, so there's velocity there. So I think that should be fine. Let's go back into Solaris. Let's have a look at our plant drops here. All right, so it does bring in velocities there. All right, so I have discovered the issue. Sometimes this LOP input prims here doesn't apply to the entire thing. Again, I'm not sure if that's a bug or a feature. If we put star now it works. So I don't understand why sometimes that just doesn't work. You would imagine that LOP input prims 0 will work on the entire hierarchy, but it doesn't. All right, so on this one it did work. On that one, let's put it to star. All right. Sometimes, like, sorry if this is sometimes a little bit more chaotic than the rest of the course, but again, like, I'm still relatively new to Solaris. This is one of my first Solaris projects, so of course I'm a little bit less confident with some of these things that I'm doing, but hopefully it's still useful. Right, so let's look through this thing, and now theoretically we should have motion blur on everything. The good thing is that, like, now we've configured this, so a lot of this stuff we don't need to do for the next couple of shots. So that's good at least. So yeah, now we should have motion blur everywhere. We have a nice looking shot. So then you can do your thing with your fetch. We say, all right, render main. It's going to be the main gamma ROP, and then render rain, I guess. And in the render rain, we can put in this one. Houdini gel. And then you would either submit these separately, for example, to that line like that. You could merge in multiple. You could say merge, do it like that, put on that, click the icon, and then you can do frame by frame or node by node, depending on how you like it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this shot, unless I'm forgetting things, which I don't think I am, but If I am, then I am sorry. And then I'll get back to it in a little bit. But let's move on to the next shot, which is gonna be the close-up of the leaf hitting. So this is going to be very similar in setup to this thing. So it should probably be pretty fast. We need to replace some of the materials, like for the close-up leaf. Background plants should be somewhat similar. Rain material should be somewhat similar. So actually, one more thing here before we jump into the next shot, which I kind of forgot to mention. You do need to go into the let's go here into camera effects, and we need to enable velocity here as well. So that's one of those things that I find weird. The depth of field is enabled by default. Velocity isn't normally, but I do want to render velocity. So just make sure that you do that, and then you can finally render. So with that out of the way, let's head into the next shot.